Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to our November edition of Dinner with the Devs. We're working with our game designers with this one, so it's a game design edition. I'm very excited to talk with our game designers. I hope they're able and ready to talk about game design as well. So first, some housekeeping. If you have any questions for our game designers, please put them in our live chat. We have our live chat moderator, Adam. I think he already introduced himself in the chat. He will make sure that he curates the questions. And yeah, make sure that you also subscribe to the Shell Games YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our other future streams. So yeah, let's get started. So let's have everybody introduce themselves. Let's start with Shawn, then Jared, or do I have that right? Actually, Jared, Marlena, Shawn. I'm going to follow my order. Yeah, so Jared, Marlena, and then Shawn, and then I'll talk about uh, what your role is in Shell Games and how long you've been with the studio or just game designing in general.
Absolutely, yeah. So hi, I'm Jared Mason. I've been with Shell Games for 13 years now, and I have a focus on narrative design specifically. And I've been doing everything from general gameplay design to level design to about every area that you can kind of crawl into in the design department here at Shell. Yeah, I'm excited to talk with everybody here. And yeah, I guess next up is Shawn. Yeah.
Yeah, hello, I'm Shawn Patton. I am a principal game designer here at Shell Games. Been here since the beginning and probably most well known for working on I Expect You to Die. I was the design director on that. But yeah, always happy to talk about design.
And I'm Marlena. I've been here for about 5 or 6 years now, which is weird for me because it seems like I've been here for like 2 years, but no, that's not the case anymore. And I've done a variety of different things. I've worked on educational stuff. I've worked on theme park stuff. I've worked on some internal things, lots of VR, and I've been doing more lead and project direction stuff lately. Yeah, all over the place.
Good stuff. Yeah, so for the audience and for our designers, the question I want to really have us think about, not answer just yet, but have throughout our discussion, just let it mold over in your brain. What continues to excite you or intrigue you about game design? So for our audience, feel free to put your comments in the chat, and Adam can share that with us. And again, if you have any questions stemming off of that, please feel free to ask them. So let's start with Shawn. So what exactly does game design mean to you? So if you say, if you told me you're in game design and I tell you, well, what exactly does that mean? How would you explain that?
I think so. You'll probably hear this from other people too, but the core of it is communication. So there's sort of different aspects of that, and they also change throughout the life cycle of a project. But it's a lot about making sure that all the ideas that the team has had, that you've had, are communicated to the right people in the right way at the right time. And that is the heart of it. It's not just I think of a game and you all make it. No, that's not how it works. There's a lot of back and forth and collaboration throughout the whole process.
Now, Jared, Marlena, you guys are more than welcome to jump in at any time.
Yeah, I think that to me, design is about being an advocate for the player during game development. There's a lot of things that influence game development, from the cost of creating a game to the time frame that you have to make the game, to the restrictions of hardware, the limitations of technology, and also like the composition of your team. And all these things can kind of come together, and it can be really easy to fall into a place of like, okay, well, let's just do what has always been done, or let's do this thing which we know is really safe and easy to do. And that never happens at Schell Games because we have amazing designers. We're always, we have amazing teams in general. They're always pushing that envelope to make sure that we're making the greatest and best experiences for players. And I think that that's partially design's responsibility. We have a mentality here at Schell where the entire team takes on that responsibility. And in that way, everybody on the team is a designer. And, if you're working as a designer on the team rather than like an engineer and an artist or a producer or whatever, then it's your job to make sure that you are being the voice for the player, right? Like you are saying, like, you know what, like they're going to have so much more fun if we do this. And if that's not going to work, then, let's find a way to get as close to it as possible. So it's being that advocate, it's being that stand-in. And to me, that's a lot of what design revolves around.
Good deal. So, Jared, you talked about, you mentioned both game design and game development. Is there a difference whenever you talk about a game designer versus a game developer? Is there some, I'm sure there's some similarities, but are there any, core differences with that? And then anybody can answer.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that for me, the verbiage in the games industry is constantly evolving and constantly changing to the point where I don't know anymore. It's interesting because like I have this unique perspective on like what people call each other because I consider myself a narrative designer. But what that means studio to studio is completely different, right? In some studios, they're called writers, right? In some studios, like there are no writers or narrative designers. It's just gameplay designers that create the writing, and they're the people who do like story. So when you ask, what's the difference between like a game designer and a game developer? To me, and this is probably a personal perspective, a game developer is anybody who's developing a game, right? So that's everybody on the team. When I refer to our team, I refer to them as a team of game developers. And then our design department specifically is doing the things that we kind of just talked about.
Cool. That's accurate.
Okay.
Oh, all right. Maybe I'll just talk louder. How's that? Oh yeah. No, I'm just talking to myself because I'm crazy. Totally handled that well.
So what's going on? We have a full team of producing this stream. So we have Adam as our live chat moderator. We have our tech producer Mac, who you may or may not be able to hear, just giving the instructions to the team. So again, just thank you for everybody who pitch in to make this stream possible.
A lot of that collaboration we were just talking about.
That's right. So speaking of the collaboration and the different hats that game developers wear, I do want to dig in a little bit more about what Jared mentioned about the different types of design, the narrative design, the level design. How can people or should people specialize in those different niches in design? And I know Marlena, you said that you recently have been jumping from just level designers to project direction. So you've worn some different hats as well. So I'd like to start with you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think of it kind of like if you think about different kinds of writers, the more like designers are kind of like that. Like if you bring in some, like if you say, oh, I need a writer for this thing, and the thing is like a horror piece. There are people who are more experienced in writing horror, and then there are people who are more experienced in writing like commercials for household items. And so the same way that there are different kinds of writing with different kinds of specialties that might overlap, there are different kinds of design and different specialties that might overlap. And so a level designer, for example, might have a specialty in laying out the physical space that a player is running around in. But you can have subspecialties even there, people who are more specialized in doing level design for VR games, or level design for first-person shooters, or level design for cute little top-down things where you have little animals running around. And so the same way, I think some of the big specializations that are fun to watch out for are narrative and writing. So that's world building and story and writing dialogue and branching and writing pieces of information that you find in the world. Level design, which we just talked about. Systems design, which is coming up with the big overarching features that the game is made up of, and balancing things like difficulty, and if you have weapons in the game, like how do those weapons work, and leveling up, and like anything that's big and systemic like that. You have people who specialize in playtesting, which is something that I think all designers do, but specializing particularly in having people come in and play your game and getting really good, juicy feedback out of those playtesting sessions. Let's see, what other kinds? There's plenty of kinds. Puzzle-specific designers is another big one. What other ones? The other ones are escaping me, but there's like lots of different little subfields and big subfields.
Yeah, I feel like you could break systems design down into a lot of different subfields as well. Things like combat design. And,
combat design.
Like I know there are designers in our studio who specialize in like 3D math, right? Like they're able to, do things that I didn't even know people were capable of doing. So I'm not one of those people, as you can tell.
Yeah, and I'd also say that like as you become more senior as a designer, when you're first in the industry, you're doing things like authoring content and suggesting smaller feature changes to a game that already exists. Whereas the more senior you get, the more likely you are to be doing vision holding and making bigger, broader design decisions. And the more new you are, the more likely you are to be in engine actually implementing things. And then the more high up you get in terms of like large projects, the more likely you're going to be in meetings all day. So that's another split of specialties.
Yeah, there are also places where design kind of crosses over with art too, right? Like we have a lot of UI designers in the studio and UX designers. And these people are also, they're being champions for the players as well, but in a way that is a little more visual than some of the other people work, right? So they're creating the user experience, the flow through different screens of the game, how the player interacts with the game through visuals. So, we have people who are tech designers, right? Our tech designers are people who think of like, what's the best, what system can I design that helps other people work? What can I do to help make our pipelines a little more fluid? What can I do to make sure that everybody's operating at max efficiency? And so these tech designers are often like in there creating tools that maybe the player will never see, but it requires just as much design thought and input as a gameplay system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people who specialize in that are wizards.
Very true.
Yeah, it's some pretty wild stuff. So how did all of you get into game design? Like what started your path? How about, let's start with Shawn.
Yeah, sure. I would say, well, my path started a long time ago. So I grew up, so my mother is a fine artist, my dad's a computer scientist. So I like to say I was genetically bred to design video games. Probably said that before, but yeah, no. So I think I made my first computer game in like 3rd grade in Logo. Shout out to all the Logo programmers out there. Yeah, not many of them. But yeah, no, I think that, from board games to computer games, I enjoyed playing them and I enjoyed creating them. And so I definitely was looking for, a career that would let me do that. And how do you get into that? So I sort of, in undergraduate, I majored in computer science and I minored in film, again, because it sort of had, both of those halves. And then I found a graduate program called the Entertainment Technology Center that, again, was a group between the Center of Fine Arts and the School of Computer Science. And again, it's like that mix, right? So keep following that mix. And then coming out of there, I had an internship where some guy named Jesse Schell was my boss, and then a year or two later, I was working at Shell Games, and so I was very fortunate in my path. I sort of knew what I wanted to do, and obviously I worked hard, but I was also very fortunate in that I was able to sort of follow that, thread that needle, because it really is difficult, and to end up at some place like Shell Games, which is so good at treating its employees well, and obviously I'm still here right after almost 17 years, and that is very unheard of, especially in the video game industry, where a lot of my friends are like out of place for like 1 or 2 years, so that's my whole story from birth to now.
Well, I mean, at least from year 3, right?
Yeah,
So,
third grade, not year 3. So really 8 years old.
Okay, so let's say it's not as bad. Okay, so that's good. How about you, Jared? How'd you get started?
Wow. I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons in middle school and high school and college and now. And, I got really interested in storytelling in as many various forms. Went to school for creative writing. And when my advisor asked me, like, what do you want to do with this creative writing degree? And I was like, I don't know, man, you tell me. And he goes, all right, we're going to figure it out together. And then it was like my senior year of undergrad. And he comes running down the hallway with a Game Informer in his hand. And he goes, Jared, did you know that you can write video games? Like, they look for English majors to do this stuff. I was like, yeah, but like, I don't know anything about computers. He's like, nah, you're going to apply anyway. And so he kind of forced my hand, and I just kind of started cold calling places and being like, hey, I'm putting myself out there. And it just so happened that Shell Games was looking for a writer at the exact same time I was graduating undergrad. So I am one of those people. I do not have a graduate degree. I just went straight from undergrad into working, and kind of like what Marlena said, right? Like my first job at Shell Games was putting content into the game, right? And watching for like narrative inconsistencies and helping to create dialogue and stuff like that. And since then, you have to grow. You have to grow with that profession. So that's how I got started, but it is definitely not where I am now, right? Like, have to find ways to grow and improve yourself as a professional and get your hands into as many different kinds of design as possible. So yeah, I guess my story doesn't start when I was in 3rd grade. It starts with me not knowing what I was going to do my senior year of college.
Well, no, you said you played D&D in middle school.
That's true. D&D
in middle school.
D&D, kids play Dungeons and Dragons.
There you go.
Play Dungeons and Dragons as much as you can. Play tabletop role-playing games. It doesn't have to be D&D.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
Be brand specific.
Yeah, there's so many out there.
There's so many. If you want to know how to create systems and interact with players and do game design and understand, branching narrative, and there's just so many skills that tabletop role-playing games build. I think most of the designers in the studio, including those here, we all play tabletop role-playing games together. So
Yep.
should do it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Marlena, you're up.
All right. World of Warcraft. Can I be done? I mean, like, that's, yeah, there we go. All done. I played a ton of WoW in high school. Like in middle school, there was a guy who was like, have you played World of Warcraft? It's kind of fun. And I'm like, oh, this is great. Wanted to go to school specifically for video games. So parents were like, keep your options open, kid. Went to CMU, computer science and art. Starting computer science, and then I was like, what about the part where you interact with the people who are actually using the thing? And people are like, that's very funny. No, we do systems here and graphics programming. And I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong place. So I went over to the School of Art. I'm like, hey, I applied for the School of Art, but I decided not to go for it. Can I still get it? And they're like, oh, your portfolio needs some work. And I had a teacher over there who introduced me to who took pity on me when I was crying, basically, and introduced me to Unity, which is a game engine. And I'm like, oh, this is how you make video games, because like at that point I was like programming in C for like low level system stuff. It's like, no, here's the missing link, and it's like the puzzle piece chunk, got it. This is how you do the thing. And so from there, he introduced me to Jesse. I took Jesse's class at the ETC, and scrimped and saved my portfolio points to get an interview at Schell, and have been here more or less ever since. So yeah, it's been a fun ride. Only like 10% tears along the way.
Well, that's a low percentage, so we'll take that.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Somebody have something?
That's it.
Oh, okay. Jim has a question. Thank you, Jim, for tuning in. Has anyone worked in the field other than gaming? What would be the biggest difference?
I worked at Microsoft for a summer, product design, and the fields have a lot of similarities and a lot of differences. A lot of the design process is very similar, like coming up with story flows and thinking about your ideal user and having people come in and test it. But on the other hand, working on a super giant app like OneNote, like I was at the time, like the decision-making process involves a lot of people. And so like, it's not just like, oh yeah, let's put this in there and test it. It's like, we need to make sure that we are clear on what's going into the Android version of OneNote Mobile. Is it gonna be 2 buttons or is it gonna be 3 buttons? It's a big difference. And so that was, and there was a lot more like research, like there were researchers embedded on the team. So those are the big differences that I remember. And I'm sure that there are more, but I'd open it up to other people.
I mean, I worked at Arby's for 5 years.
What's the difference between Arby's and video games?
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about Arby's. First of all, I loved working at Arby's. Second of all, though, I often actually credit Arby's with a lot of my team building experience and a lot of my ability to work with others. For anybody who's ever worked fast food, customers can be terrible, terrible people. And you have to have patience, understanding, empathy, and altogether self-control, right? I think anybody who works in customer service can understand this. Those are all skills you absolutely 100% use the rest of your career, no matter what field you're working in, right? Team building, like they're to run an efficient fast food restaurant, you have to be able to work as a team and make sure that you're communicating with the people who are making the food, making the fries, handing out the orders, right? Like there's a lot of communication that goes into that as well. Those are absolutely skills that you will use throughout your entire career. So I think often people look at food service and customer service jobs as like, oh yeah, this is just my stepping stone to when I get to my career. But you are developing skills there, and you can develop skills there that will make your entrance into whatever you want to do eventually that much easier. And if that is what you want to continue to do eventually, like then all the better, right? Like you're developing those skills there. Point is, look at every job as an opportunity to develop long-term skills.
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. So we kind of dived into this already. Yeah, you guys already mentioned your majors, and it seemed like there's not a clear-cut way of getting into the industry or to start with game design. So I think that's important for our budding game designers who are here watching the stream to know that. And so thank you guys for sharing your stories. One thing that I did want to point out that Adam, if you can put Marlena's game portfolio blog post in the live chat, you talked about the importance of having a portfolio of what you're doing. Can you just go a little bit more into detail about that?
Oh yeah, sure thing. So the reason I wrote that blog post is because like I would get asked all the time by people like college graduates, people who were thinking about getting into the industry, people who were like 1 foot into the industry already, people like 10-year-old moms, like all sorts of people like, okay, so how do I know if I want to be a game designer? There's an article for that. And then what do I need to put into my portfolio? Because it is like getting your foot into the industry is hard. And having a really solid portfolio and showing that like, yeah, I've done some game design and here's some proof. Whether that's as part of your own personal project or that's part of schoolwork, or that's like a thing that you did with some friends one weekend, like having that displayed and having just some proof that you've done a little bit of this can be a really great step to get your foot in the door as somebody who's entry level. And yeah, I go into a lot more detail in that post, but the basics is like have 1 to 2 projects, ideally that you've finished, ideally that you have process work for that you can post on the website, and ideally that you've done with a team. So checking the boxes of have worked with a team before, have done some game design before, can finish a project, and can show that you had an idea that you then developed over time with feedback. Like this thing didn't work. We discovered it in playtesting. And so here's how we changed it to make it work. And here's why it then did work. Like just that information is like super solid gold stuff to have in your portfolio. So I'm sure that the other folks here can go into more detail on that, but like those basic things are like super solid.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I also, Marlena, you've got a lot of awesome articles up there. You did one on documentation, different types of design docs, things like that. A lot of great stuff out there. And I think that's part of, obviously that's Marlena's awesomeness, but it's also, Schell Games does like to, Schell Games encourages us to go out to conferences, to, have speaking opportunities. Obviously, even things like this, right? Where like we love to share the information because, why not? Like there's plenty to learn and plenty more to learn after you've learned some. So I think giving back to the community is also very much part of Schell Games' vision.
Very cool. Yeah. And speaking of just being part of the community, being out there developing stuff, one thing that I see a lot of Schell gamers do, not just inside the studio but outside, is also participating in game jams. So Shawn, I always love what wild game jam experiences that you come up with. So can you just talk a little bit about for those who are brand new to it, what a game jam is?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the group, we can jump in about how Schell Games does game jams, and then generally, why is it important for those who are getting into the game field to participate in game jams, or at least know what game jams are and their importance?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, so usually when we say game jams, it's there's a usually short period of time, 48 hours, maybe a week, a lot of 48-hour game jams. And you're basically going to work and create a game in that short amount of time. And you're basically going to be like, working as much as possible through that to go from pre-production to production to, bug fixing and QAing all in that span of 48 hours. Probably one of the most well-known video game jams is the Global Game Jam, which happens every year toward the end of January, early February. And that is something that I've managed to do every single one of. And this coming year, it's going to be virtual. Don't worry, 2021, there will be a Global Game Jam. But the amazing part is, right, you go into it, maybe you have a team, maybe you don't, maybe you get more people, you have some people, but you get more people there. And usually it's at a physical location. Although there are a lot of Ludum Dare, and there's a lot of virtual board game jams as well. But the main point is, you go in completely, open to whatever, maybe you're given a category or topic or something. Maybe you're given a piece of hardware or a theme. But basically, in that weekend, you're coming up with ideas. The first night you're trying things out. The next day is like all iteration, lots of getting some people over. Hey, come play this game. And it's just like it's all of game development, distilled down into this very intense, 48 hours type of thing. Because usually, we work on projects that go for a couple months up to 3-4 years maybe. And so to have that entire experience in one weekend is super fun, exhausting, but super fun. And then you're left with this artifact, right? And like maybe it's not the best game you're ever going to make, right? But hey, it's yours, and it's from that one period of time, and it can look really good on your portfolio because you're like, these are the things we did, these are the things we tested, these are the things we wish we had time to do. And just sort of like writing analysis of that, having it on your portfolio, on your website, super useful things. And they're happening all the time, especially now the virtual ones. You can go to a game jam in any country you want because they're all virtual right now.
Yeah, or you can make your own and just be like, hey friends, let's take this weekend and build a game. The theme is, I don't know,
weasels.
The theme is weasels. Let's do it. Let's make a game based on weasels. We have 48 hours. And you can go and make it. And like just setting that deadline for yourself, especially one of the things that game developers learn over the course of their career, but takes a couple of months or a couple of years to really get under your belt, is to keep it small and keep it simple. It's really, really easy to be like, oh, we're going to make this awesome thing. It's going to have 20 levels, 16 playable characters. It's going to be online, multiplayer. And then you're like, oh, we don't have time for any of this. We did 2 levels. There's 1 playable character. Like game jams are great for that, and it's a great space to like get those fun, exciting, giant ideas out of your system and get a sense for like that sounds mean, but like that's literally what everybody does. That's what I've done. Like been like, I have this great idea for this thing, and then it's like, no, I can't do this in one weekend. So it's a great space to get a sense for how much you can actually get done with a team of people in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I would throw in there too that game jams are a great way to do what I think every designer will tell you, every game developer will tell you if you ask, hey, where do I start? The start is just start building some games. Like if it's a board game, then that works, right? If you understand Unity or Unreal or whatever other engine, cool, build a game there too. It's just the place where you need to start if you want to say, how do I get into games? It's like, there's a lot you can do, but during all that time, be building games. Always be building games.
Yeah.
And I'll say that, breaking into it, but also Schell Games, right? We do every year what we call Jam Week, which is we sort of stop our normal projects and, we work on sort of, these ideas that have been bubbling up inside us, right? And so a lot of and some of those games then go on, we make, right? Like, Enemy Mind was a Jam Week.
Wasn't I Expected to Die?
Orion Trail. I expected I was not. I expected I came from some early VR prototypes, but but yeah, Gumtrix, Orion Trail, Enemy Mind, probably some other.
Some of the features from Until You Fall. The whole crystal crushing mechanic was one that I think they didn't originally have the scope for, and Patrick's like, I'm going to build this feature during Jam Week and show you how awesome it is. And then,
there you go.
Like now it's in the game. It's a core feature. You go crush, and the magic
so good
goes everywhere.
So satisfying.
The loved it in trade shows and conferences. That was like the high point of a lot of people that was a Jam Week thing. Mm-hmm. But also too, Happy Adams was iterated during Jam Week. So yeah, no, we use Jam Week for a lot of purposes of just kind of pushing the envelope for some things, and then just testing other things that what Shawn said can turn into original IP.
I'm smirking because 2019's Jam Week. Coworker Sam and I did this crazy VR, sharing one person in VR, one person in real life, but you're splitting the controllers. And it was this bizarre game where you're like feeding birds, like to prevent this baby from waking up.
It's
But
so
but we submitted it to the experimental gameplay workshop at the Game Developers Conference, and it was accepted because it was definitely experimental. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we had to do it virtually. But you know, that's another, like, just like it is. It's freedom to explore all those crazy wacky things that, you know, you can't do as client work necessarily, and it's too big of a risk to do internal IP risk. But game jam, sure, man, why not?
Yeah, Jam Week's so much fun.
It is.
yeah, no, it's a blast. All right, so let's get to some questions. See, Maxima, thank you, Maxima, for tuning in again. She's a big proponent for Until You Fall and one of our big Discord members. So thank you for everything you do. So she asks, how much time do you dedicate to learn new technologies that may affect what you're doing in your current project? Or if you want to take a little bit more simple question, how much of your working week time is allocated to self-enablement or maybe self-improvement? So I guess how much time do you take to learn the new technology? We could talk a little bit about this in terms of the game engine stuff, or some of the interesting things for our original IP that we've researched. And then yeah, how much of your week time or how much between projects do you typically get to work on self-development versus uh, being on full-fledged on a project?
Uh, I can speak for new technology.
Yeah.
For new engines and stuff where it's like this is a tool you have to learn. Usually it's like between projects. It's like, hey, you might be on an Unreal project next. Why don't you ramp up in Unreal for the next month? For new tech, it's usually like hit the ground running. All right, you've got this new weird thing. Go build a game for it. And it's like wrapped into the development process. But as designers, it's usually a lot of fun because it's like, all right, you're ramping out of this project. Learn what this thing is. Learn what the SDK is, and go build a thing for it. And just do it on the job. At least that's been my experience. It's fun.
Well, I guess, Shawn, I'd like to lean on your experience of being the design director for I Expect You to Die. You just got this weird Oculus SDK, and the studio was asking, like, how can you create a experience where I'd say a lot of people are getting motion sickness? Like, this was what, 2014, 2015? So
Yeah, DK1 days.
what's up?
The Oculus DK1 days.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
That
So
was
what did you do to, like, what was your process in approaching that type of design?
Yeah, a lot of prototypes. So that started out, another designer engineer here, Matt Lucas, was doing some early prototypes, Jason Pratt was, and we just did a lot of prototypes because one thing was we didn't at that time really know what the controller was going to be. So we knew that it was going to ship with an Xbox controller, maybe, probably, but we also, so we, like, the original I Expect You to Die that we put up on the Oculus Share was done with the mouse, basically mouse and keyboard, mainly mouse, just a little bit of keyboard to get you in there, but then mouse, because and that's why the whole telekinesis thing came from the mouse, right? Because we needed some way for you to reach in and do things in the VR world. We didn't really want to do gaze based, and the fascinating thing from doing these prototypes, right? We found that moving the mouse in sort of the 2D space on your desk was easy for your brain to map to the 2D space in the world, and then we would do the 3D, the depth for you. We'd put that reticle where it wanted to go, and then clicking on the button and holding the button was a lot like grabbing something and holding something. And so that's where that whole control scheme came from. And then obviously we adapted it for the touch controllers and for like every other VR controller known to humankind right now. But that all started as a bunch of prototypes of, like, first things we were looking for was controllers. Like, what is a fun and easy and intuitive, because VR is going to be new to a lot of people. I mean, it still is new to a lot of people, but especially back then. and what is something that they're familiar with, how do we make that map into VR? And so that design process was a lot of iteration, a lot of prototypes, a lot of playtesting with naive people. And it still is. VR development is still, I mean, as Marlena mentioned before, you do playtesting with every game, but geez, you have to do it a lot with VR, because it's so important to get that intuitiveness and keep that immersion. And if anything, if the affordances don't match or things like that, it can break you out of that really quick. So.
Yeah, Sean's great at that. Sean is has a reputation at the studio for being very good at like, here's this new thing, we're gonna put it in front of players, and over the course of play testing with a ton of people, Sean's gonna come up with something that feels really good for players. So yeah, very much a resident expert at that.
You enjoy playtesting.
And we're gonna get to that. So speaking of what?
Nothing. Just spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah, no spoilers. We're gonna get to it.
Yeah.
But speaking of trying to figure out how Schell Games makes a game or makes something feel good, or what type of style of game we are designing. Spy Dominator asks, what inspired you to make a roguelite VR game, referring to Until You Fall? But we could speak of it more generally about what type of inspires different teams or the studio to explore what games we should make.
That's a great question. I think that the inspiration to design and create a certain type of game comes from a lot of different places. I actually just gave a talk to a class on this about where ideas come from. And let's see if I can remember some of the notes from that. They can come from, here's this exciting new piece of hardware like VR, and let's figure out what we want to do with that. It can come from, I watched this movie the other night and they did something there. I think this is going to make an amazing game. The idea can come from there. The idea for a game can start with a game mechanic of, oh, wow, I played this game the other night and they did something. And I'm like, what if I made an entire game off of that? It can come from an art style. Like, wow, the way that somebody did this movie, I would love to see a game take advantage of that art style. And so I think that the inspiration for what type of game do you want to make comes from all over the place. And I know that the people who worked on Until You Fall and having this roguelite, like that was a genre that I know at least a few of them were very, very interested in. But not only that, but it lends itself very well to the type of game we wanted to build, right? That game of the reward loop, right? That the game of VR is best experienced in certain chunks of time, right? That all these things kind of combine together to almost kind of show you the type of game it wants to be. That sounds a little cliche and like high-minded, but if you listen to your limitations and your constraints, it can often lead you to like, oh, this is what this game wants to be, rather than forcing it into the box that you want it to be.
Yeah, I agree. And I've not worked on Until You Fall, but I live with Patrick, and Patrick sure has worked on Until You Fall, and I've listened to his talks that he gives enough to give at least a little bit of an overview of how that came to be. Schell was working on a project with Disney called Jedi Challenges, which was for a piece of hardware called the Mirage, which you can still get. It's a piece of hardware where you can fight Star Wars characters with a lightsaber. And they they had some constraints with that they wanted you to feel like you were a cool Jedi Master and you could tell where the hits were coming from before they happen. And so that's how they came up with the premonition system where you block, hit, block. They were like, this is when they finished up with the project, they're like, this is a cool system. We think it could work even better in VR. can we try that? And signed it off with Disney to make sure that that was cool, and it was cool. And then they were like, okay, we've got this cool system. What can we do with it to expand on it and make it its own cool flavor? And then that's where, like Jared said, like a lot of them enjoyed roguelikes, and it all kind of came together with that. So yeah, Patrick's got some GDC talks plural about that are online. So if you're interested in that, it's on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, I think it's on YouTube, and no, definitely on YouTube. I think we saw it on their GDC channel. Cool. Let's see. Phil Donahue asks, Phil, thank you for tuning in again. As designers, it sounds like you're still working in code and game engines quite a bit. How does that differ? How does the design work in the game engines differ from the engineering team's work?
Good question.
Great question.
It depends a lot, but usually if it's the lower level down it is, the more it becomes engineering, and then the higher up content creation, the more it is design. And so a lot of times designers will go and make diagrams or like spreadsheets or like storyboards of like, here's how this feature could work. And then depending on how the team works, they might build it themselves. Or especially if it's something that's heavy lifting, so like multiplayer, or if it's like another like low down systems level thing, or if it's interfacing with a new piece of hardware, that an engineer is going to handle it. But it varies team to team. Like if it's an Unreal project, Unreal has a lot of tools that are built in that make it a lot easier for game designers to go in and just be like, I'm going to go and build this myself out of visual code. And some designers do also make the split between like they're like designer programmers. Like we were talking about Matt DeLucas earlier. He's like very split between like he's a designer, but he's also an engineer, and so he'll get in and do that coding himself. And then some engines or some teams will just be like, no, it's easier to make the split so that engineers are completely doing all of the code work, and then designers are doing all of the using tools and implementation, or sometimes they'll even be completely out of engine and just be saying like, here's the stuff that needs to happen, and then the engineers will implement it. So it's a fuzzy line. It depends heavily on the team.
Yeah, we mentioned earlier about the tech designers, and a lot of what they do is they'll help bridge that gap, right? Boy, it would really speed things up if we had this tool. And either they'll make it or they'll work with engineers to make that, and then the designers can just riff on the content or riff on iteration, and a lot of that will be handled. Or as Marlena mentioned, you do a lot of blueprint work in Unreal, and then it's like, okay, well, now we got to optimize. Let's take these blueprints, move them down into C++. Whereas in an engine like Unity, there's a bit of okay, I need to have some sort of scripting, some light scripting to begin with, unless the studio has some tools in place. But then it's a much more sort of even flow. I love if you're talking about engines, one of our engineers, Jason Pratt, has a great metaphor. He said that Unity is like your traditional swimming pool. It's got the 3 foot shallow end where like, you need to know how to swim a little bit, but if you're tall enough, you can basically enjoy the pool. And then it's a nice gradual transition to the deep end, where you're swimming for real and diving down and having fun. But Unreal is like one of those no edge pools. You just walk in, whatever you want, right? And you're just having a great time in the pool. But if you want to go deep, you got to get out of the pool, walk 10 feet, climb a giant ladder, and then dive into C++. And so it's like a very good metaphor. So I'll shout out to Jason Pratt for that. But yeah, so it depends on the engine, depends on the team, a lot of different things. And then if you're in a design director role or a project director role, then I actually don't spend any time in the engine, right? I'll be in there playing bills and giving notes and things like that, but I'm actually not so much in the engine nowadays on the project that I'm currently on. There are smaller projects where I will be in engine. So it depends. There's a lot of it depends answers.
Yeah, and I'll pile on to the it depends answer too. It depends on the designer as well, right? Like we talked about, depends on the team. Also depends on your strengths. I think that there have been a lot of accommodations made for me personally, as a person who does not have a computer science background, has no coding background, and so I was going to teach English So I came to the games industry with a knowledge of how to tell stories, but not a knowledge of how to make games. And when you come to the industry with that, you can, but you have to be open. Like I can attest as my personal journey is that you have to make time to learn things. And that can be hard. It's been very hard for me in a director role over the past couple of years to find the time to learn Unreal, for instance. I learn more about that engine every single day. And as Shawn said, most days I don't have the ability to get in there and get my hands dirty like I would want to. But the ability to learn is a skill, and don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise. Like if you can learn how to learn, then you are in a great spot, because it's going to allow you to say, oh, we're doing this type of game in this engine using this type of hardware. All right, I can learn this, right? And having that growth mindset is going to help you develop as a game developer.
So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marlena.
No, I was going to agree 100%. That's all.
Cool. So we are running out of time, and we have some questions, some things I still want to get to. So first, we talked about playtesting. So Shawn, why is playtesting so important for game designers? And Adam, if you can, drop Shawn's post about conducting a playtest, and they can get that guide that's at the bottom of the blog post. So Shawn, why is playtesting important for game design?
Yeah, no, it's super important because you know your game really well, and your team knows your game really well, but no one else does. And so you need to test it with naive people to see what they get and what they understand. Because if they don't understand it, well, guess what? They're not going to play it, right? Or if there's something that's frustrating or confusing early on, they're not going to see that awesome level that you designed 10 things in, or they're not going to get to that awesome story that Jared wrote, because they're going to be like, this game is ridiculous. I don't understand how to jump, or I don't understand how to, get past level 1. And so, as much as it's useful, and you get pretty good at putting on that naive hat and testing a game new every time, like, having team playthroughs every week. But man, you can't really do it for real. And so you've got to do that playtesting, and you've got to do it from the start all the way through. You want to test those prototypes. Absolutely. You want to test that first white box level. That's, a very rudimentary level. You want to test that, that first vertical slice where you've got most of everything working in one tower. You got to test as you get every level done. Got to keep going. I think we tested I Expect You to Die basically every week, maybe every other week in the beginning, but then every week in the end, for sure.
Yeah, there's nothing quite as humbling as saying this is perfect. This game's perfect. Nobody's ever going to, like, if people are going to love it, they're going to make their way through so easily. And then you put it in front of the playtester, and you shouldn't say anything, and you're staring at the playtester. He's like, why isn't he pressing the button? The button's right there. The button is so clear. Why isn't he looking at the button? He's so frustrated. Why isn't he pressing the button? Yeah. And then you get to the end, and they're like, yeah, I just didn't know how to progress. And you're like, did you see the button? And they're like, sorry, what button? And you're like, we have to redesign a button. Like, they just didn't see it. They did not see the button. The button didn't look important enough. Like, you run into that all the time. It's so important to playtest, because until you get that person in front of, like, that, you're like internally screaming, like, press the button. Like, until you get that, like, you can't be sure that it's going to survive in the wild.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hard. It's hard to sit there and say nothing. It's hard to get it to a point where, like, okay, this is ready to test. Oh wait, I want to do one more thing. No, just test it, because there's going to be things from the test that are going to change that thing you were going to do, and they're way more important than that thing you were going to get to. But it's hard. You gotta be disciplined about it. It is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the marketing side, I just love watching playtesting, because one, you see the product that the team's working on, and then you see, like you guys were talking about, you see the project in the wild, and they're saying something, and the team said something about the game. It was like, oh, that doesn't compute. And so, like, we're just writing all types of notes. So yeah, I love watching playtests, and I think that they're just absolutely fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Tangentially related, I love watching streamers, obviously play our games, but really play any game, because man, streamers are really good at playtesting. Because what do we ask people to do when they playtest? we ask you to do a stream of consciousness of what you're thinking. And that is what streamers do. So it is super awesome to watch them play our games, but also just in general. So
Yeah,
shout
they're
out.
so honest. If you ever streamers and children are the most honest playtesters. Like, why is it this way? This is dumb. Like you'll hear that from streamers and you'll hear it from children. And you'll be like, oh yeah, it is dumb. Now that I look at it, I'm gonna fix that.
So my children should stream, and they would be the ultimate playtesters.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the lesson.
That's it. Yeah. Stream as a child and work at Arby's, and you're a game designer. Yeah,
exactly.
This stream is not sponsored by Arby's in any way, but
But it could be.
but I think I'm gonna go get some roast beef tonight.
that's right.
Only $9.95.
Toss me a Jamocha shake.
Hey, Arby's, info at Schell Games. Let's go. Okay. Let's see, a couple more things. A couple more questions. Shaken asks, oh, this is a good one. So from a design perspective, what type of documentation system or process do you use to keep everybody on the same page?
I've got a blog post about this.
Drop that hot link.
Can we link it? I don't know if we can link it or not. There's a lot of different...
It's marlenaabraham.com, and they'll be able to find it, right? Because I think it's one of your...
I believe so. Or like if you go to the Medium article that has already been linked, and you go to my other stuff, like it should be at the top of the list, like 11 different design documents, something like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways. Storyboards are a great one, like sketches of here's what it should look like, and then if you press this button, it goes to here. That sort of stuff is great. Flow diagrams, love those. Like here, like here's where the player starts out, and then here's the 3 different choices, and you just do that in text. Spreadsheets are great. For things like I don't know, I use them for all sorts of stuff. Dialogue, and here's the most important thing that we should be working on right now, and just, like sorting by priority.
Catering it to the audience was one of your main points, right? You want to make sure that the document you're writing is going to be best. You know, if you're writing it for engineers, it's going to be different than if you're writing it for the artist, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you're writing it for the client, and I think keeping that in mind is key when writing documentation, because otherwise people aren't. You know, it's hard. It's really hard to get people to read your docs. And so the best you can do is cater it toward engineers tend to love bullet pointed lists. Obviously artists tend to love axes of like here's this one graphic style and here's this, where on this spectrum do you think it should fall, like things like that, right? So
yeah,
and that's all about communication.
Yeah, the rule of thumb is that if nobody reads your doc, then it's a bad doc.
Sure.
And so only make a doc, like make the doc as simple as possible, make it as short as possible, and make it convey the information that you need it to convey to the people you want it to convey it to. And if you don't need to update it, don't update it. Like if everyone's like, yeah, I'm all on the same page, like cool, that doc can die. Like don't ever need to look at it ever again. Only keep it updated if it's necessary for the team.
Okay, so let's keep going. We have 2 more questions, and then your final thought. I really want to get that question to you guys. Shinken also asks, let's see, how do you decide if there's enough content in your game? Is there kind of a process, maybe your guts, or you keep implementing new features at the end of production? You can kind of maybe go into timelines, especially with Schell Games and how we operate. But how would you like to answer Shaken?
I think that this also probably differs designer to designer. Personally, I prefer to just get bare bones fun implementation in, right? So the process that I go through is, what is the minimum viable product that is fun to play for whatever game I'm building? And then that assures that you have this foundation upon which you can build other features and other game mechanics and new gameplay that can feed back into that foundational loop. I think that some people prefer to like build out as much as they can and then strip down. But I think when it comes to game development, if you build out a lot and then try to strip down to like what works, you might have interdependencies that then if I strip out this thing, then this thing isn't as fun anymore. And so if I strip out that, then suddenly this thing doesn't work at all. And so I think if you start off with like, okay, I'm gonna build like a fighting game, Like, well, what do I need? I need 2 different attacks, a punch and a kick. I'm going to get that in there. Great. All right. I have a fighting game now, like, because their health goes down. And so what do I do now? Like, well, what about combos? Combos are fun, right? And so you build that layer. And then it's like, what if I had aerial attacks? And so you build that layer, right? I've never built a fighting game before. And so I don't know if that's how you do it. But
That's good.
That's an example of my mindset. Build what is fun and then build on top of it.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's a lot easier to add stuff than to get to the halfway point and be like, oh my goodness, we're running out of time. Now we have to strip stuff out. And like it's so much easier to start small and build up than it is to have a ton of stuff and then try and strip it down.
Good stuff. So last question, if you had to tell a prospective game designer only one piece of advice for a career in game design, game development, what would that be?
Keep a blog of the games you play. That is a critical analysis of what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and why. I think that's incredibly important. I don't do it as much as I should, but every time you play a game, which you should be doing if you want to build them, write down what about it is good and what about it is bad. It doesn't have to be something that you publicize. It doesn't have to be something that anybody else ever sees. But your ability to critically analyze games is the first step in helping you understand how to build good games.
I'd say make games. Go make games. Doesn't matter what the games are. If you can't program, go make card games. If you can't do art, go make like outdoor sports that you can play with your household because it's COVID. Like half the games I made in undergrad were like things that were not computer based, and learning how to make games and make them fun and make people play them. That's the other thing. And make sure that the people enjoy them. Like if you can do that, you can translate those, like it takes time to translate those skills, but you can translate those skills to making things with programming and art later. But going out and making games, like Jared mentioned this a lot earlier, so go do that.
Yeah, I'll synthesize this too. I mean, we talked about game jams a lot. There's a reason, right? Making games, having people enjoy them, as Marlena said, and then the blog and analyzing them. And I do think, if you can, put them up on a website, because I think that is absolutely one of the things we look at when we're hiring people. And we want to see how you think, how you make interesting. Games are all about good, interesting choices, right? And seeing how you think about that and putting those into games that you've made. Super important and super informative.
So with that, we'll conclude our November edition of Dinner with the Devs. Shawn, Jared, Marlena, thank you so much for your time. Mac, Adam, Jill, Allie, the rest of the marketing team, thank you so much for your help in putting this stream up. For everybody else, thank you for tuning in, for watching the stream live or for watching it after the fact. Again, make sure you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, enable the notifications so you know that when we're going live, when we have our videos. Our December edition is not going to be it's going to be very similar to this one. It's going to be December 16th. We're not doing the end of the month because everybody's on vacation, so I can't get people after work hours. And there we're going to just be talking about games in 2020, the future games that are coming out, what we're interested in seeing, what we would like to see. So all that good stuff. So that'll be December 16th, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And we hope to see you then. Have a good night.